What up, sports fans? Waxon Wednesday. Jake Waxman, top level. Let two guys talk sports. Let's rock and roll. All hockey today. Just giving you a heads up. Talking all about hockey. And we're going to start, and of course, starting with the Stanley Cup Finals. Another very intense, action-packed Stanley Cup Finals. And as always, there's two sides to the story. We're going to start with the champions. Once more, the Florida Panthers. And first of all, congratulations to the Florida Panthers, their players, their executives, coaches, and the fan base. Congrats to all of you on going back-to-back in the Stanley Cup. So not only winning one Stanley Cup, but they went back-to-back, 2024 and 2025. Good for you, Florida. You earned it. That team, they earned it. They deserved it because they were the best team when it mattered most. They played their best hockey. And oh my goodness, they just absolutely scored a ridiculous number of goals. I won't say I have the exact number, but it was a lot. I think over 60 goals were scored by these Florida Panthers in this postseason. This Florida team, 100% a juggernaut, 100% a powerhouse. Say what you want about them, but they're the new gold standard of the NHL. And in some ways, they remind me of the early 2010s Blackhawks that won 3 Stanley Cups. Of course, Florida can say they went back-to-back. The Blackhawks sadly cannot. But Florida back-to-back. Hard thing to do. And now both Florida teams have done that. And now the state of Florida has won the Stanley Cup a combined 5 times between the Lightning and the Panthers. And, well, we talked about Edmonton, but this was an all-systems-go machine for the Florida Panthers. And you know what? Margin of error? What is that? They didn't have any more margin of error. And you know what? Because there really was no... They could make all the errors they want because they were... Clearly, this team, they knew what they were doing. They were in control the entire series, even if they blew games 1 and 3 and 4. But they were in control. The outcome was never in doubt for these Florida Panthers. And I'm happy for them, okay? I was just thinking about Edmonton in that moment. That's why I just sighed. But I tell you what, one of the big reasons Florida won, because of all that depth. You got to have depth to win that Stanley Cup. And Florida, they got more depth than any other team in the NHL right now. New gold standard. Everybody's going to be comparing themselves to the Florida Panthers of right now. You got guys like Sam Bennett, who won the Conn Smythe. He's going to get paid this offseason. I don't know if it'll be by Florida or some other team. And then, of course, the big addition, though, the big reason why, in my opinion, why Florida won this, Brad Marchand. That guy went off this postseason. He's 37, and he was playing like he was 25. Incredible. Nothing but respect for the man they call the Rat. He may be a rat on the ice, but when it came to the Stanley Cup playoffs this season, he was 100% clutch. And he was big in this series. I thought he might get the Conn Smythe. He probably would have been my choice, but Sam Bennett, with all the goals that he scored in the postseason, perfect choice, though, for Conn Smythe. But this Florida team, they're good. They are legendary. The stuff of hockey legends. Absolutely earned that right to hoist Lord Stanley's Cup. Sergei Bobrovsky, great when he needed to be. And other players stepping up for Florida. The scoring depth, and the forecheck of the Florida Panthers dictated the pace the entire series. That's why Florida has gone back-to-back Stanley Cup championships. So, once more, congratulations to the Florida Panthers and their fans on a tremendous Stanley Cup triumph and back-to-back Stanley Cup triumphs. And I will just say this. Congrats to Brad Marchand, and nothing but respect. The guy, say what you want about him, but you know what? He earned it. He earned his right to hoist the Stanley Cup. And you know what? Great time contributor for the Florida Panthers this postseason. So, what can I say? Florida Panthers, the best of the best in the world of hockey. Only one question lingers right now with Florida. I have no doubt that they're going to have a great chance to go back to back to back. I bet you they're already thinking about the dynasty, the three-peat. which is very rare to do in hockey. Question now is there any NHL team out there that actually can stop them? As of right now, I mean, it's too early to tell, but as of right now, I'm just not so sure in this moment. And then there's we got the thrill of victory, and then there's the agony of defeat. The Edmonton Oilers, back-to-back Stanley Cup runner-ups. And you know what? Watching this Edmonton Oilers team, I gotta eat crow. Florida made me eat crow, and in a way, so did Edmonton. Oh man, they proved me wrong too. I thought things were gonna be different, especially with the way Edmonton started the series, coming back from behind and winning Game 1. Oh, I was so wrong. And and based on the experiences they had, I thought they had learned a lot from their previous Stanley Cup loss. There's just one thing I was wrong about. They just never really adapted to the way the Panthers' playing style. And, Leon Draisaitl, he had a fantastic series. McDavid had not as good of a series. But Draisaitl, if the Oilers go on and win the Stanley Cup, I think he would have won the Conn Smythe. But here's the thing. I mean, this is a series that I thought was going to go the distance. I thought it was going to be 7 games, and I thought if it goes to 7 games, Edmonton's going to have a great chance to upset Florida. And I knew, when I predicted Edmonton in 7, I knew I was taking a risk. I was going with my heart and my gut more than my mind. So my mind was admittedly saying Panthers in 7, but it was not to be. Florida clearly was the superior team, and Edmonton realized this. And just, like I said, they just didn't really do much to counteract Florida's playing style. Not too many adjustments. And, you got guys like Gustav Forsling who was defending Connor McDavid to perfection. And did a good job on Leon Draisaitl, even though Draisaitl had a few goals in this series. So that defense really shut down. In some games, they shut down Leon Draisaitl, but they were able to shut down Connor McDavid in this series and hold him to just 1 goal in the Stanley Cup Finals. And I also thought Edmonton was going to have a great shot to win this in 7 because they had discovered a new scoring depth. They had 18 different goal scorers heading into the Stanley Cup Finals. Unfortunately, in the most crucial games, that scoring depth disappeared for the Oilers. And you know what? I even said this back in a previous video. You know what? If the Oilers lose this game in, say, 5, 6, I might have said 6. Quote me if I'm wrong. But if this series ended in, say, 5 games or even 6, I thought to myself, everybody is going to be looking at Game 3. Everybody's going to be looking at it. And sure enough, I think Game 3 was the undoing of the Edmonton Oilers. Even though they won Game 4, Game 3 showed that Edmonton had a lot of flaws that they had not addressed in the offseason. And they either would just lose their cool or they would just throw in the towel. And from what I could tell, Game 6, Edmonton had looked like not only they had run out of fuel, but they had just thrown in the towel. And it just looked like they were just demoralized. And Florida, that's what Florida does. Florida is a great team. And what makes them great is with that forecheck and scoring depth, they can demoralize you easily. And Florida, when they need to, they got off to the hot start, scoring first and then taking control of the game. With the exception, of course, in games 1 and 4, they failed to maintain control. And Edmonton was able to come from behind. But Edmonton was just never in control in this series. You can make the case they were never in it, actually. We thought they were. And I'll admit this, I thought they were too, Series being tied up at 2 games apiece after Game 4. I thought they were in it. Game 5 and Game 6 showed just how wrong I was about the Oilers. And they got beat, and they got beat good. But, okay, Florida, superior team. But I think Edmonton, they failed to learn the lessons from last year's Stanley Cup Finals. And you know what? They never really adjusted to Florida's, tempo. They never made changes. And you know what? The defense, offense went quiet at the worst possible times for the Edmonton Oilers. Defense gave up too many odd man rushes and too many goals, and goaltending. Look, I thought Stuart Skinner had found a new gear, but in this series, look, I don't blame it all on him, but he had a difficult series against the Florida Panthers. When you combine, the lack of offense, defense under pressure, and then goaltending, struggling goaltending, whether it's Skinner or the backup, sadly, this is the result you're going to get. It's amazing. Now that I think about how this series really turned out, it's amazing that this series even went to 6 games. You could just be, okay, the Panthers wanted to win it at home again, because why not? But the Oilers had chances. They could have won. They could have won Game 2 as well. And if they'd won Game 2, we'd be talking about, preparing for Game 7 instead. But, missed opportunities. And you know what? Edmonton, too many times they got behind and they either lost their cool or just never really found a way to keep pace with the Florida Panthers. So, and going forward for the Edmonton Oilers, pains me to say this, but this was probably their best opportunity to win the Stanley Cup. Or these last 2 seasons, best opportunity to win the Stanley Cup, and they squandered it. Now you got some decisions in the offseason. Do you make a change in goaltending? Do you trade Stuart Skinner or let him walk in free agency? Who else do you resign? What kind of other contracts do you think you need to move? Could you make an attempt to move the contract of a guy, say Darnell Nurse, for example? Those are things that Edmonton's going to have to figure out. And Connor McDavid, probably the best player in the NHL, but after 2 Stanley Cup Finals appearances, he's still ringless, sadly. I don't like the guy too, but Florida showed it takes more than 2 great players to win a Stanley Cup. You need a great team. Edmonton had 2 of the best players in the NHL, but Florida had the best collection of talent and the best depth, the best team this season, no question. So lots for Edmonton. So Edmonton, they're going to be looking in the mirror a lot. They're going to be second guessing themselves. Losing the Stanley Cup not once but 2 years in a row. And this Stanley Cup Finals loss worse than the last one. Last year was heartbreaking for the Oilers. They fought so hard to get back into it and were in it in Game 7, just couldn't find the back of the net. This year, they did not have that same pulse that they had compared to last Stanley Cup Finals. So, a lot of work to do for the Oilers in this offseason. A lot of pieces probably to be moved. And question is, what does Connor McDavid do? I imagine he's going to stay in Edmonton and sign a new contract, but could he possibly think about going somewhere else where he may have a better shot to win the Cup? Because once again, been too long since a team from Canada has won the Stanley Cup, since 92, those Canadians. Or 93, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been over 30 years. So how's Connor McDavid feeling about it? Because I don't question, he and Draisaitl are giving it their all, but it's clear those two need more help and need more depth around him. And Edmonton needs to work on building more depth this offseason if they want to not only make it to the Stanley Cup Final for a 3rd straight year, but finally win it with McDavid leading the charge. So again, we asked if the Panthers would have a serious challenger who could dethrone them from their Stanley Cup, from their hopes of winning a 3rd straight Stanley Cup. And like I said, unless Edmonton really makes some serious changes and brings more depth and learns the lessons from these last 2 Stanley Cup Finals, I just don't see anyone stopping Florida next year. But too early to tell. Again, congrats to the Florida Panthers on winning the Stanley Cup, and congrats to Edmonton on another tremendous postseason run. And now, speaking of hockey, all right, the Blackhawks are in the news. I just learned this, and this is wonderful, wonderful news if you're a Blackhawks fan. This made me smile. The Chicago Blackhawks have announced that they have re-signed Ryan Donato, the guy who led the Blackhawks in scoring last year. He had over 30 goals. He led the team in scoring last year. Critical piece to the team's success. He was testing out free agency, but it looks like the Blackhawks made him an offer that he liked, and so he's going to be staying put in Chicago. And for all I know, here's what I do know: it's, I believe, a 4-year deal, about $16 million in that contract, and it's going to be about $4 million a year for Ryan Donato. So that's $4 million, a $4 million hit against the cap. Not bad if you're the Blackhawks. That's not bad at all. That was really one of the best outcomes you could get when re-signing a guy like Ryan Donato. Fantastic piece. The Blackhawks, they need more offense, and he brings that, no question, with his goal scoring. And I'd love to see what he can do if the Blackhawks somehow make the postseason. I would love to see what he can do if they somehow make the postseason. All right. Sorry about that. Just checking my battery. But like I said, the Blackhawks, they're gonna be busy this free agency. They might be looking at guys maybe like Mitch Marner. We'll see. But that would be a pretty expensive contract for the Blackhawks. But signing one of your key pieces, though, to a new deal and only a $4 million hit against your cap situation is great. That's grade A contract work. Nicely done, Blackhawks. And signing a guy who I think who could work really well with Connor Bedard if you put him on the same line. So, it's going to be a long rebuild for the Blackhawks. I don't expect them to make the postseason next year. I hope they make improvements. But re-signing a guy like Ryan Donato, who led the team in scoring with over 30 goals, and to a solid 4-year deal, that is a step in the right direction. Keep your pieces together. Ryan Donato, he's a difference maker out there for the Blackhawks. No question about it. And to see the Blackhawks take his contract situation seriously and offer him a deal that he liked and keeping him in the Windy City, beautiful. If you're a Blackhawks fan, you gotta be smiling. Hey, future's bright. And this is a good step in the right direction for the Chicago Blackhawks. On to this day in sports history. On this day, the 18th of June, in the year 2000, the 100th U.S. Open men's golf, Pebble Beach. Tiger Woods wins his first U.S. Open by a major championship record-setting 15 strokes over Ernie Els and Miguel Angel Jimenez. All right, sports fans, that's all for this week's Waxon Wednesday. Any questions you have, feel free to leave them, or any comments, anything you want to say, leave it down below. Feel free to say whatever you like. Criticisms are acceptable too. And with that being said, I'll see you all this week for Friday Roundtable. This is Jake Waxman from Two Guys Talk Sports, wishing you all a good week.